this. Today is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, observed annually on January 11th, a day dedicated to shining a light on one of the most insidious violations of human rights affecting millions worldwide. In Nigeria, trafficking takes many forms, like forced labor, sexual exploitation, child trafficking, and also migration scams that promise jobs around the world, but deliver abuse and, or whatnots. The problem isn't just individual criminals, it's rooted in poverty, lack of opportunity, porous borders, digital deception, and also limited awareness.
And to help us understand the risk factors and the strategies needed to push back against this crime, we're joined by Mohammed Ahmed, CEO of Black Mole Consulting. He's an expert in prevention, protection, and anti-trafficking advocacy. Good morning, Mohammed, and thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, good morning to you. Good morning to you all. Good pleasure being here with you.
Grand.
Awesome. Now, Mohammed, on National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, let's start with the basics. You know, can you tell us why is Nigeria part of the? You know, they said Nigeria is the tier 2 in trafficking. Why is it that? Is it because of, you know, the poverty, unemployment? What exactly is it?
Okay, thank you for the question. You see, the problem is it's multifaceted. Nigeria is not just the source for trafficking; it is also like a medium and also a destination. Okay, so we have traffickers within the system, within the country, you know, pushing people out of the country, exploiting them. We have Nigeria as a passageway for trafficking, you know, and we also have Nigeria being a recipient of trafficked victims, you know. So it makes it very, very challenging because it has to do with migration. And trafficking itself is not just the migration is not just across borders, even within the system, you know, from the north to the south, from the east, you know, take Lagos State, for example. You would find out that we have almost all the ethnic groups in Lagos State, and we all know that we have some categories of ethnicity in certain professions, you know. Oh, I need a house help. You're not concerned about the age, okay? You know which part of the country that might come from. Oh, you need girls who call for commercial sex working. You know which part of the country that is prone to. You need people for hard labor. You know, all those restaurants or probably workplaces that are focused on informal labor, you know, they know where to get all that from. So it's a problem because it's common amongst the elites. And then the elites, those that are even in the space of leading the country are actually drivers of this trafficking. So it's not just with those that we see in the news as the vices in the system, like the drug traffickers, like the cyber crime individuals, or people involved in actually human trade. We have significant people in the system, even cutting across religious houses, you know, traditional leaders who actually facilitate, you know, this shady business. So, and if you look at the socio-economic climate of the country, taking indices of poverty, taking indices of, you know, the poor parenting system, the pressure, the fear of, the psychological fear from parents who have given back to children they cannot actually manage. You know, at this point, I want to say that there's a TikToker, you know, I don't know if you've heard of the statement, "Movie must stop." Okay? Movie must stop is a mix of the Yoruba and English semantics, meaning who gives back to must stop, must nurture. You know, as much as that statement, that coined word has been taken out of context, is just to say that we have to be conscious of how we procreate in the system. The pressure within the family system is it's a community, it's a societal or community problem, but let's start with the family unit. If you are not ready, and I'm speaking to women now, because at the end of the day, the men are the ones actually, donating their sperms all around. If you cannot be there for a child, do not bring that child to life.
Oh, okay then.
I can tell
Mohammed.
you for free, on the average.
All right, Mohammed.
Yes, please.
All right, Mohammed, sorry. I just wanted to ask a very interesting question here. I was waiting for you to conclude, but I had to jump in here. You said something about the fact that if you need specific kind of labor, you go to specific places to get these kinds of labor from the people there. It must mean that it's a problem that's entrenched into the society where these people live. You also find that sometimes people, individuals in these societies who are not even victims, actually put themselves in the position to be victimized because it's normal for them right now in their society to perhaps maybe want to go be a house help someplace or even be trafficked outside of the country for sex work. So you find them applying themselves even. So I want to look at the constitution of what makes the word trafficking. If one puts themselves in that position to be trafficked willingly, is it still called trafficking?
Well, within the confines of the law, it is still trafficking because if you as an individual, as a child, or as the victim decides to go that route, the problem is we've normalized migration or movement from one location to the other as synonymous to success. Okay? Back in the early 90s to the 2000s, where the visa lottery thing was so high, and we had a lot of Nigerians traveling to European countries like Italy and some Arabian, the Middle East to do chores and all. It was because it was associated with success. So the ignorance of not knowing the whole picture, so you are coerced, you are manipulated due to your current socio-economic situation to believing that, I tell you for free that even some individuals are doing very well in their current location, but by the assumption that if they probably go on that journey, on that pursuit, they'll get better. So for them, they are not aware of their situation. The mindset of going on that journey wasn't for the purpose of being trafficked. It was for success. So if you look at the motive in the confines of the law, that individual is exonerated. However, if at all, it will be the parents or probably the caregivers of, in this context, if it's a minor, less than 18. In this context, if it's a minor, if it's less than 18, then the parents or the caregivers will be responsible for that individual. But if you're an adult and you've made the decision to travel or migrate from one part of the country to the other or outside the country for the purpose of finding probably a better livelihood, and you end up in traffic, then it's a responsibility on you. You face the consequence. Okay. However, the burden of the crime is on the trafficker because from the get-go they have an ulterior motive to exploit. And that's against the laws, the human rights laws in the country. So I think it's just that explicit.
Specific places
Are you
where...
there?
Yes, we are. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I hope you can hear
Yes,
us.
I can.
Grant, so if the authorities have the data of where specific kinds of labor come from that has coerced people into putting themselves in harm's way to be trafficked, what are the authorities doing about it? For instance, NAPTIP. What are they doing about immigration from Edo State? We all know the stories that we've heard from that. What are they doing about the specific nature of trafficking or traffickers from Akwa Ibom State? What are they doing about those in the north? We know the specific natures of these areas and what traffickers take advantage of. But what have the authorities done specifically in these areas to be able to forestall people being trafficked?
I think so far it's been more of advocacy so far. But the advocacy we even have is more giving information to the public. The emotionality, the mental health perspective, or the psychosocial perspective. You see, we don't get to bring these victims we didn't bring them together with the information that we share to the public. So people do not see or understand the weight or the consequences of these crimes. Okay, and then we have poor statistics. That's the truth. We have poor statistics, and like I said earlier, most often times than not, the elites are involved. You know, the power holders are involved even in this crime. So I think we need to strengthen our policies, you know, to actually put more punitive measures on ground. Like, I was happy when I saw in the news last week that Lagos State has banned, those on the streets, those beggars on the streets, and those trying to just, constitute a nuisance without a sense of purpose. The mindset of coming to Lagos is a place where you make money regardless of how the situation is. So a lot of people just come to Lagos without understanding the realities of coming to Lagos. And, you know, when the basic physiological needs are not there, your food, clothing, shelter, you are not in control of those three things, then you would never find psychological safety. And that is what the traffickers use. So the problem is trafficking starts from the psychological pressure, probably from within the home first. You know, the government can, there's little to how the government can, how do I put it, can control, except we have, you know, punitive measures that actually send people to jail, especially high-profile people to jail, and it is actually, you know, publicized. You live on the island, you need a housemate. You need a housemate, rather. You know, you should understand that you shouldn't be looking for a minor by what the law says. And if you are getting a minor, there are conditions for, you know, for you caring for that child within the context of the law. If you cannot fulfill all these conditions, then you are liable to be prosecuted. You know, so I feel the data is not, well, I don't see so much NGO in this space yet. Yeah, the ones that are there are actually have been even politicized because, like I said, it's a very, 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 the trafficking system is connected to a lot of other significant factors in society, the politics, you know, the economy, you know, the business and all. A lot of factories are actually trafficking also, you know.
Right. So
Mohammed, when they get labor, you know.
You just mentioned, Mohammed, you just mentioned that, you know, trafficking is broad, it's connected to so many things. And now let's talk AI and social media. Traffickers now use social media and messaging apps to lure victims. You know, they even do adverts to make it very inviting for them. How would you say is the best way for us to curb this digital, you know, technology game that they're using? You know, they've found different ways to lure people. And of course, allegedly it's said that, you know, it's poverty and unemployment and insurgency that is leading people into these situations. What do you think NAPTIV and all the NGOs and all the organizations who are trying to fight trafficking, what do you think they can do to curb this situation and find a way to, you know, cut off all these channels through which they're trafficking people from Nigeria?
Thank you very much. You see, we are doing more from the remedial or the punitive from the corrective approach. We need to invest more in prevention, you know, and that has to do with a lot of sensitization, especially in communities and in school systems. I said earlier that even trafficking happens in churches, in mosques, you know, in religious environments. You know, we have some churches, for example, they build homes around those churches, and, you know, people who are stranded or people who are not, that do not belong to that environment would come seeking for shelter. And then they are still exploited in the process, you know. So we need to start holding religious leaders, significant individuals, influencers in the society. We need to start holding them accountable. They need to start speaking. They need to start lending their voice to this campaign. Then we need to start also preparing the minds of our children, of our adolescents, because you see, once a child's basic need is not met, it starts from the beginning of those formative years. Once a child cannot find safety or a sense of belongingness in an environment, that child is vulnerable, whether it is physically or online. And then because of how it is on social media today, there's little to how we can actually monitor conversations due to how the micro platforms have been. So however, we should start having reporting channels too, like for the cybercrime act now that is active, and we know what lines to call and what direct channels. Even for domestic violence, we have that channel too now. And I assure you also that a lot of domestic violence cases are actually also related to trafficking, but they are underreported. We should start encouraging individuals. We should start having whistleblowers. Such that everybody is mentally alert. For online, I think influencers should start talking about this and start promoting it so people are aware, because any video an influencer makes online today actually goes a long way, especially in our local languages. We need to start using our indigenous languages to communicate, because, for example, if you're coming from somewhere in the east or somewhere in the north to Lagos, we need to communicate in those languages for those young chaps to understand that it is not as easy as it is.
All right, then, Mohammed.
We need preventive measures. We need more education from that angle.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mohammed, for joining us. And of course, this is a situation that has been ongoing, and it is not just distant or abstract. It is happening in our homes and communities across Nigeria. And like you said, awareness leads to prevention, and prevention begins with knowledge. So we appreciate you joining us and giving us insight as to how this is happening and the best way to prevent it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
You're welcome.